An Ontario truck driver who allegedly blew a stop sign and killed a mother and her 8-year-old daughter in Manitoba was arrested at a Toronto airport after evading authorities for months.
Prime Minister Mark Carney is changing the Liberal government's tune on selling liquid natural gas to Europe after his predecessor claimed there was no business case for it.
Canadians are investing more capital in American stocks than they have in decades, despite the ongoing trade tensions with the US. Hello Canada, it's Wednesday, August 27th, and this is the True North Daily Brief. I'm Isaac Lamoureux.
And I'm Zoltan.
We've got you covered with all the news you need to know. Let's discuss the top stories of the day and the True North exclusives you won't hear anywhere else. A Manitoba crash ended in tragedy after an Ontario truck driver, Navjeet Singh, allegedly blew a stop sign, killed a mother and her 8-year-old daughter. The RCMP have since arrested the motorist at Toronto Pearson International Airport after spending months evading authorities. According to police, Singh was taken into custody Thursday at Toronto's Pearson International Airport by Peel Regional Police and officers with Canada Border Services Agency after he spent 9 months on the run. It's not yet clear where Singh has been hiding for the last 9 months, but police said on Friday that he was arrested while arriving back in Canada via an Ethiopian airline. Singh was first charged last November with 2 counts of dangerous operation of a motor vehicle causing death, as well as obstructing a peace officer after police said he failed to stop at a rural intersection, crashing into an SUV and killing 2 of the vehicle's occupants. A 35-year-old mother and her daughter were killed in the crash while Singh was sent to hospital and later released. After his release on November 20th, RCMP charged Singh with 2 counts of dangerous operation of a motor vehicle causing death. A Canada-wide warrant was issued for Singh's arrest, but rather than turn himself in, it appeared the truck driver fled the country. Upon his most recent arrest on Friday, authorities added that Singh is to be escorted back to Manitoba in the coming days and will be remanded into custody while he awaits a bail hearing. So Alex, you hear about roads, especially in the GTA, getting more dangerous in the last few years, but why is this happening?
Well, Isaac, this is an issue that goes back many, many years. And in fact, Kathy Tomlinson, who is an excellent journalist writing for the Globe and Mail, wrote back in 2019 about an intersection between trucking and widespread endemic of immigration fraud. Specifically, she noted that a lot of trucking companies are insourcing their labor from countries like India. And a lot of the folks in India who are coming over to fill these trucking occupations and these jobs are actually, they're not experienced truckers. Some of them, she reports in 2019, didn't even know that they were going to be truckers until they landed in Canada. And then they're sent to, we can say, unscrupulous trucking schools that offer training. But the word is to be taken lightly because the training is not necessarily as professional as you might expect. And so you have inexperienced, poorly trained truckers with very little knowledge of road safety now occupying the roads. The statistics that we have, and they're fairly limited, flesh that out clearly. So in 2020, we actually saw a historic low in terms of roadside fatalities in Canada at 1,745. In 2021, there was a slight uptick. In 2022, it continued rising to just short of 2,000 fatalities per year. And then in 2023, it hit a 10-year high, and it appears to be trending upward since then. So this does appear to be an endemic issue that has really ramped up since the pandemic and since a lot of these immigration schemes started to arise at the same time. So more anecdotally, a very high-profile incident occurred recently in Florida in which an Indian truck driver who had received his license from California, which operates similarly sketchy services and licensing to truckers as we do here in Canada, he did a U-turn across, I believe it was a 3-lane highway. And as a result of the U-turn, 3 vehicles collided into the bed of his truck and unfortunately perished. That case is also making its way through the court system, and that driver has been charged. So it will be interesting to see how American authorities deal with the issue as compared to Canadian authorities. Prime Minister Mark Carney pledges to deepen trade and defense ties with Europe during his visit to Germany, stating Canada would stockpile critical minerals and liquid natural gas for sale to Germany via new ports. In Berlin, alongside German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, Carney outlined several ways his government intends to strengthen ties with Germany and Europe. including selling LNG, a move his predecessor, Justin Trudeau, famously claimed had, quote, no business case.
Prime Minister, just one question about raw materials. Could you please explore a bit more what Canada can realistically actually offer to Germany and Europe, given the fact that ports on the East Coast and also pipelines are still lacking?
Thanks for the question. Look, there's a huge range of immediate opportunities with respect to critical metals and minerals, and there are medium-term opportunities with respect to all forms of energy, including LNG and hydrogen.
Despite the former Liberal Prime Minister's claim there was no business case for Canadian LNG sales into Europe, a recent CBC interview with Poland's ambassador revealed that Europe is, quote, constantly interested in Canadian energy.
Well, remember, some of that LNG that is coming from United States to Europe, to Poland, is also Canadian LNG. But it's being sold for a much higher price, I would say, than when it would come from Canada. Yes, we are constantly interested. We would like the Canadian LNG market to open to Europe. We would like to see the Canadian gas flowing to the east coast on Canada, and the Canadian gas flowing in European pipelines.
Carney said his government was unleashing $500 billion of investment into energy, port, and intelligence infrastructure. He said, quote, it's the number one focus of this government to build that infrastructure, and particularly infrastructure that helps us deepen our relationship with our European partners, and particularly Germany. So, Isaac, how are Canadians reacting to this? Is this a complete admission from the Liberals that they were wrong about liquid natural gas under Trudeau? And what else did Carney announce while he was in Germany?
Yeah, Alex. So Canadians are unsurprisingly treating Carney's pivot on LNG as a reversal from the Trudeau years, when Trudeau told German Chancellor Olaf Scholz in 2022 that there was no business case for LNG exports to Europe. Critics called it a missed opportunity as U.S. firms stepped in and signed multi-billion-dollar deals with European nations. And even Alberta Premier Danielle Smith later proved Trudeau wrong by signing her own LNG deal with Japan, reinforcing the argument that markets for Canadian gas obviously exist. Now that Carney is pledging to stockpile LNG for Germany, it might be viewed that the Liberals' previous position was miscalculated. Poland's ambassador has underlined that Europe remains constantly interested in Canadian LNG, pressing Ottawa to build direct export routes to cut out the U.S. middleman. And Conservatives have argued that Carney's turnaround is too little too late, after years of stalled projects left Canada sidelined, while the U.S., as I said, captured a $750 billion European deal. As for Carney's European trip, it went far beyond LNG. He pledged a $500 billion investment program targeting energy, port, and intelligence infrastructure, with artificial intelligence guiding where funds are directed. Some of these investments include reinforcing Montreal's port, expanding East Coast terminals, and building a new port in Manitoba to ship LNG and critical minerals to Europe. Carney also highlighted Canada's role in supplying rare earths, saying demand for critical minerals will quadruple as militaries scale up spending. And to that end, Canada and Germany signed a joint declaration to strengthen the minerals industry and promote commercial partnerships. And on defense, Carney has promised that Canada would finally hit NATO's 5% of GDP spending target by 2030. Of course, this is a repeated promise from the Liberals that they have constantly not reached, and that's when it was 2%, having only recently risen to 5%. But Carney plans to quadruple military expenditures from the 2024 budget. He also unveiled the shortlist for Canada's new submarine project, naming Germany's ThyssenKrupp and South Korea's Hawa Ocean as contenders, and said he would personally visit the facilities in October. But in short, Carney seems to be very good at pledging to spend money. Of course, I'll remind listeners that Canadians have still not been presented with a budget from this federal government and have no idea where this money is coming from. And I'll remind you again that a budget was presented in the Great Depression, in World War II, but here we are without one, as Canada sinks further and further into its already $1.27 trillion debt every day, as interest payments on that debt keep growing as our largest expense, with even more money spent on interest now than education and healthcare. Canadian investors are enjoying the U.S. stock market despite the ongoing trade war with U.S. President Donald Trump's administration, injecting the most capital into American stocks in decades. According to data compiled by National Bank of Canada Financial Markets, Canadian investors have put $124 billion into U.S. stocks this year, putting the country on track to establish the largest inflow of capital into the American market since the 1990s. Trump's tariffs and 51st state rhetoric don't appear to have deterred Canadians, likely because the U.S. market has outperformed the domestic benchmark for years. Canadians have, quote, seemingly failed to employ a buy Canadian or sell American philosophy in their own portfolio dealings, wrote NBC-FM's managing director Warren Lovely in a note to clients last week. While Canadian index funds have actually outperformed those in the US this year, many people still believe that investing south of the border is a safer bet. Lovely said the trend is, quote, rather stunning, considering the decline in cross-border tourism and US liquor being pulled off the shelves. For example, the S&P TSX Composite Index, the benchmark Canadian stock market index, has increased by over 13%, compared with only a 10% gain in the US S&P 500 index, which is, of course, the index of the top 500 companies listed in the United States' stock exchange. The Canadian benchmark hit its 30th record high for the year last week, likely in response to Prime Minister Mark Carney removing all retaliatory tariffs on US goods on Friday. Additionally, Canada's largest pension plan invests nearly half of its assets in the US, and its share of investments has grown since Trump threatened to annex Canada. So, Alex, is it surprising that Canadians have not been deterred from investing money in the US stock market?
Well, I don't think it's particularly surprising given that the US stock market is the world's largest stock market. The United States is the world's largest economy. So I think regardless of what the elbows up people have been saying, Canadians are inevitably going to continue investing things like the retirement savings into the broad, wider, sweeping U.S. market. I should also note that the statistics on the Canadian market outperforming the American market are very limited in their scope. So in 1 year, or well, at least in this year to date, scenario that's been outlined, Canada's index funds have marginally outperformed U.S. index funds, but over the last several decades, if you go back to the beginning of index funds related specifically just to the TSX as opposed to the TSX S&P-wide composite, Canadian index funds have underperformed significantly, almost by an order of magnitude. So I believe the largest Canadian index fund, XIU, at the moment, it has an annualized return just under 10%, versus the S&P 500 has a 1,500% return over a comparable time period. So ultimately, smart money will go where it expects the maximum compounding returns. People tend to invest their money based off of expanding their retirement portfolios and not off of their political feelings. So I don't find this surprising at all.
That's it for today, folks. Thanks for tuning in. You can stay on top of new episodes every weekday by subscribing to the Daily Brief on iTunes and Spotify. Also, while you're at it, make sure to hit us with a 5-star rating and please leave a review.